Only 4 teams remain in the battle to be crowned the 2025 SailGP champions. And Abu Dhabi is going to be a battlefield with only the best making it out on top. For Spain, if they want to make the final, they need to finish 4 places above the Aussies, 6 places above the Black Foils, and 9 places above Emirates Great Britain. It's a tall order, but as we know, anything can happen at SailGP. Lisa, if you were Spain, what would be your strategy going into this one?
Oh, it's elbows out for Spain. They've got their swords out there fighting everybody. I think for the Spanish, they can't just sail their best event because they need to put points in between them and the other boats. So I think for the Spanish, I'm going to expect them to go for the closest. So they'll be out for the Bonds Flying Roos. So like previous years, I'm expecting match racing. They'll try punish them, but it's that balance of trying to punish them, but then still try win races.
So Lisa mentioned the Bonds Flying Roos, Stevie. What would your approach be if you were Tom Slingsby?
I think if I'm Tom Slingsby, I still think I'm the main man. I've won this championship 3 times. I believe I'm going to be in the final. And it's about getting momentum towards that final. I think the interesting one, back to the point on Spain, I think don't underestimate that all those teams are going to be under pressure. You know, yes, Emirates Great Britain, I think they're basically in. I don't see them having an issue. But New Zealand and Australia, any sort of slip up on that first couple of races, and they're going to be super nervous. So I kind of feel like if I'm Spain, let's get into the first race. If I've got a cheap shot at Australia, so I can easily come and attack them in a pre-start, or I'm ahead of them and I can, you know, put a bit of dirty, disturbed air onto them, I'm going to take that opportunity. But let's get my regatta up and running. Good couple of races. And I think that's potentially how all the teams will be early on, is can I get a cheap shot? Question I've got, Dylan Fletcher, Emirates GBR, who do you want in the final, Tom Slingsby or Diego Botín?
Or Peter Burling.
Or Peter Burling. So who do you go and go, right, actually, I'm going to take out the Bonds Flying Roos?
I think it's interesting. I think sitting here, yes, I think that it's like luxurious to have the choice of who you pick, but going to a race course like Abu Dhabi with the level of the fleet that we have right now, I don't think you have that much control. And kind of what you were saying, that if you have the opportunity, you hurt them, but you've really got to focus on yourself, get that momentum going for the race weekend. The other thing that we just have to be mindful of is you still have to get through that final in one piece. So you want to make sure your boat is fully operational, you're not getting any penalty points for the weekend, because that's when we see things just go completely out of control.
And when it's a potentially lighter wind event like Abu Dhabi, and the racing tends to be a lot closer, a lot more tight-knit, and there's more at risk because you're moving a bit slower, there's certain manoeuvres and obviously rule sets that you can take advantage of. Is that going to play a part, as you say, in making sure you make the final?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, you know, when we've had finalists in San Fran, it's like don't capsize and, you know, break something. Whereas in Abu Dhabi, when you're trying to attack or hurt people, you have less maneuverability, you can't get out of situations, you can't necessarily rely on your speed so much. And in that mid-pack, it's a real dogfight. So I think kind of getting out in front and getting clear, it's a lot, as you said, it's a lot harder in that light breeze to have so many options, but also in the light breeze, you can hurt someone a lot harder.
Will it get nasty, do you reckon, Stevie?
I think ultimately, if the situation presents itself, all of these teams are capable of, you know, a Ben Ainsley-esque move like he pulled on the French in season 3, where he just, you know, dominated them. But because there's more people, it's not just a basic race between the two. That's why I don't see that happening in the first race. I think that could evolve. But yeah, like to Lisa's point, the light air just puts that real priority on getting away from the start. And you could, you know, Spain can't afford to get to Mark 1 of race 1 in 8th or 9th place.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to come out firing. I think for them to make the final, they've got to be 1st or 2nd.
Yeah.
I know the numbers say technically they could be 5th and Australia could be 10th, and that would be okay. And maybe that'll happen. But mindset-wise, Spain have got to go out, win this event, and if they win this event, they'll have the momentum going into the grand final.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, you'll be saying, well, probably the Spanish are favourites.
That's their style, though.
Yes.
Every time they're like, oh, they're going to make this final, they make it, and then they win. Like, that's the way that they've sort of succeeded so far in SailGP.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I was going to say, is the pressure off Spain to the point that they're just going to go full noise and commit? But then when you put it like you've put it, and they can't lose any more races or come anywhere really lower in the fleet, it's almost like they've got more pressure than anyone now.
I think they're all under pressure.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think for Tom Slingsby not to make the final is unthinkable. So that's an awful lot of pressure. I think for Peter Burling to not make the final, that's unthinkable.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say the only team probably with the pressure really off right now is Emirates Great Britain, but then they know they're in a race
They don't
for
want to throw it
$2
away.
million. Yeah, they don't want to throw it away. As you say, you have a crash, suddenly you can't race.
Yeah.
Or you've got penalty points, and then this whole situation changes around, So there's plenty to play for. I just think, I hope there's going to be decent breeze. I think the other real interesting story with it is we've only really just got these new big T4s.
Yeah.
They've not had a lot of time, so there's a lot of learning for those 4 teams to do in terms of being the best team come day 2 in Abu Dhabi. I think there's going to be a lot of stories through it. I think it's going to get tense. I think it'll be super fun to be on the ground in Abu Dhabi and asking some quite good niggling questions. I'm hoping we can stir them up a little bit because they'll be, I think, ready for that. But,
Don't think they're going to give much away, knowing how the interviews normally go with them, trying to find out their strategy. But I think that's the thing is, right now, what the teams would be doing is obviously with their coach and within their team is talking about how the scenarios play out. So kind of like, you've kind of convinced me that day 1 is kind of like fresh out of the blocks, kind of just sussing it out, working out what everyone else's games are. And then as the situation presents itself, they've already talked about it in the briefing room and they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So kind of strategizing the different sort of plans as they play out in front of you.
And we haven't mentioned the black foils very much in our conversation. We've spoken a lot about Spain, about the Bonds Flying Roos. Peter Burling has had an incredible streak in the UAE, in those light to win. Dubai won both times, Abu Dhabi won last year. So he's going to be going in quite confident, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd thought so. I think for the, if we look ahead to the grand final, I don't know if we can do that just yet, but that's obviously going to be a very different dynamic. And I think we can really dig down into the individuals on it. And I think, yes, Peter Burling has had that. It was on the old style foils. I think, if we look at those 4 teams that are left in the mix, the only big position, so when I say big position, I'm talking driver, wing trimmer, flight controller. I think they're going to be sort of the key players when we get out there racing, is Leo Takahashi. So Leo's the only one to come in, the British team with Ian Jensen, Luke Parkinson on the wing and the flight control. Okay, they got Dylan, so that's, I suppose
Dylan's dealt with a lot of high pressure situations in his life.
So he's Slingsby's team, the Spanish team as were. I think there's going to be an awful lot of pressure on Leo to deliver. He's done a great job, let's be honest. They're right in the mix and he's come into that team. It's been pretty impressive to see his progression. But yeah, Peter Burling is a huge favourite over in the UAE, has been massively successful. But I think there's going to be a slightly different dynamic with these new foils. Yeah. And a lot for Leo to sort of learn and to cope with that pressure. Everyone else has kind of got Olympic gold medals around their neck, SailGP titles, they've been in there. Leo hasn't got any of that yet. Yeah, that's a big pressure. It's coming into that event.
And you touched on like the light wind venue, new foils, and like with the flight controller, it's like to foil or not foil is the difference between hundreds of meters. If you miss a shift or the wing's not trimmed at 100%, it does hurt you. But if you don't nail that maneuver, that can be 8 places like that.
Yeah, and anything can happen, right? Which I think is really interesting about these light to win venues, especially when there's so much on the line, $2 million. And if it's not blowing very, very much wind, then...
But it could blow.
Yeah, of course.
I think it could be super tight. And I've been out there that time of year and there's great breeze, So I'm certainly not definitely got it down as a light wind venue. I think, obviously there's a chance of that. But I think, let's hope for good wind. But I do think with that, when we get to the grand final itself, the black foils for me have to lead at Mark 1. Yeah. If they're not leading at Mark 1, I don't think they win it.
Interesting.
Australia or Great Britain, because I still think those 3 are going to be in, I think have got the ability to overtake. Well, I think largely because the black foils haven't, to me, looked quite as quick. Okay. In a straight line. And as I say, this is no slight on Leo. He's grown into the role incredibly, but I think that just that little X factor that maybe they had last year, I don't think they've quite got. Emirates Great Britain, Bonds Flying Roos, think they've got that little boat speed edge. But if they are sort of still in the pack, and if I'm looking at you here, Ian Murray and Mel Roberts. If you lay us a good race course that does make things even for the splits on the different gates and gives the chance to come back into it, then I think, we could see that sort of final situation like we saw in Cadiz, which is what wouldn't it be amazing if all three boats sort of came to that final turn all together?
I think the cool thing is we actually haven't seen, I don't think, those three in a final this year.
No.
There's been permutations like 2-2-2, and obviously they're not locked in for the final, but if they are the three going to the grand final, we haven't seen them. And what I like about it is not that Spain isn't, no matter what the permutation is for the top three, is that if we look at, last year's final, Australia and New Zealand were focusing on themselves and Spain came out. Whereas no matter who is in that final, nobody's getting off free. Nobody's the underdog. They're all at such a high level that it's going to be an insane race.
And you've mentioned that we don't know what the conditions are going to be like, but the conditions seem to have a massive impact on all the teams, but particularly Emirates Great Britain. They've only won one fleet race this season in lighter wind events. So if it was lighter winds, we've got the Black Foils who are historically strong and Emirates Great Britain who are historically weak. How do you reckon they'll approach it?
I think they've grown through I'm sort of lucky or geeky, not entirely sure which, but we get to watch the videos that the coaches get, which is like an onboard, and you hear the comms on board and you see how they're sort of using the wing. It's a super cool feature that we can get to see. And their communication on board has the progression this season's just been awesome. And their role sharing, of Hannah taking directly on the tactics, or if Ian Jensen's in the best place to make the call, he makes the call. Dylan comes in, he's definitely the leader, but he's kind of leading in a way that allows different people to take decisions when they need to. They're kind of chameleoning. Whereas I think like with the Aussies, Slingsby makes the decisions. And a little bit Burling makes the decisions.
Yeah.
And so I think that the British
I think that's why they've done so well.
Bandwidth in the light winds through the season. So I actually see the light winds, I feel like Draper's addition to the Australians, the Bonds Flying Roos, has been a real upgrade to their speed. And I actually felt that even though they didn't make the final in Dubai, I thought they were the fastest boat.
Interesting.
And they did well in Geneva as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I spoke to Tom Slingsby in Geneva, and he was saying that he just feels that they're much more versatile and much more all-rounded team, which was good to hear, I think, and that's been one of their ambitions since their historic weakness in lighter winds.
I think the thing is you want to go into a final and going into whatever the conditions get thrown at me, I think I'm the best. You don't want to be I really, really want breeze. You just don't want to have that feeling inside you, and I think that's something that they've definitely evolved.
If you're going to give a prediction on the conditions, what do you reckon we can expect from Abu Dhabi?
I'm going to go with 15 to 18 kilometres an hour, steady breeze, very small, tight race course.
Okay.
It's a tight area. It's quite flat water. They're going to have to fly the boats high to be fast. You're going to be able to be on the edge, but the trouble with being on the edge is that means you can fall off it pretty quickly. So as I say, I had a lot of pressure on the flight controllers to keep that boat perfectly set. But I'm pretty optimistic we'll have good breeze that time of year.
It's awesome because there's that big sea ball as well where we have the grandstand and we have the adrenaline lounge. So they have to optimize the full width of the race course, which means they're literally skimming that grandstand, which is so cool to watch.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. Whatever happens, the teams are going to need some clear air, some good tactics and a pinch of luck to make that final. We'll see what happens in Abu Dhabi.